Hi, Melissa Deely here, back for day 3 of my series this month on hormones. As an integrative health practitioner, I realized how important it is for us to understand our hormones in the process of how our bodies work. And I've said it before, I did not even do biology in high school. And how many of us also did not do biology in high school? Or maybe it's just so long since we left high school that we don't have a good basic understanding of how our hormones work for us. And today I'm going to be talking about progesterone. And progesterone is really important to our whole fertility process and allowing women to be getting pregnant and preparing our womb for growing a baby from an egg and building up the endometrium to help create that nourishing environment for that little egg to form into a human child. It's really such an incredibly amazing process. And we need progesterone to be at our balanced levels in order for that to function properly. So around days 19 to 21 of our menstrual cycle is when progesterone starts to increase to prepare the body in the case that an egg is fertilized, and our estrogen levels are lowering then. And then if that egg is fertilized, progesterone continues to be at higher levels throughout the rest of the pregnancy for several reasons, in order to make sure that there isn't another cycle and another egg isn't released, and to ensure that the whole ovulation process doesn't repeat. So progesterone obviously is incredibly important in our fertility process, and there are many women struggling with fertility issues today in this day and age. And part of that can be because of hormone imbalances, and perhaps they just don't have enough progesterone being produced in order to prepare the endometrium for that egg to be fertilized, and hence it isn't happening. Or for women that have struggled with a few miscarriages, they might also want to be checking their progesterone levels in the early phase of pregnancy, because perhaps progesterone levels are not high enough in order to allow that pregnancy to go to full term. So understanding your progesterone levels is really important. And also understanding how stress can impact your progesterone levels is really important as well, because there is something called the progesterone steel that can happen within inside our body. And when we are stuck in a state of chronic stress and the body is trying to produce more cortisol, sometimes what it will do is it will shut down production of progesterone and allow the body to produce more cortisol. And it's actually really smart, because if you remember that our fight or flight state was created for us to run away from lions or tigers when we were under threat back in our hunter-gatherer days. And if that's what you're needing to do, in that moment, your body really doesn't need to digest, I've talked about that before, or be trying to get pregnant, right? You have much greater things to be worried about in that moment, and that is just sheer survival. But in our modern world, with all the stress coming in on us from all directions and one stress stacking upon another, when we get stuck in that chronic stress state, the body is like, yeah, you're not in any state to be able to grow a baby. I don't need to be creating progesterone right now. I need to be creating cortisol because you need to flee or fight. So that's something else to consider. And for anybody that is struggling with fertility issues, I do encourage you to talk to your doctors about potentially the role of progesterone and testing for it. And if you would like to test for it, that is something that I can help with through our hormone testing that is done in your home. And it's a saliva test that you can then mail back to the lab, and then I can read that for you and let you know where your progesterone levels are. So some symptoms to also think about. In the case of high progesterone, you may have some of these symptoms, and I just want to point out that high progesterone is actually quite rare. But if it's you, you could struggle with fatigue, weight gain, lightheadedness, and headaches, light menstruation or no menstrual cycle at all, brain fog, nipple swelling, or tenderness. And the reason that you might have no cycle at all or no menstruation at all is because remember that it's progesterone that is creating the thickening of the lining to accept the fertilized egg. And if that egg isn't fertilized, then all of that is released out of the body as your menstrual cycle. But if you don't have progesterone, it's not creating that thickening of the lining, then there's nothing to release. And then if you have low progesterone, which is much more common, you struggle with PMS symptoms, hair loss, breast tenderness, low mood or even depression, anger, rage, and irritability, weight gain, water retention, missed periods, and heavy menstrual cycles. So it's, again, these are not all indicative of low progesterone for you. There can be other reasons for some of those symptoms as well, of course. However, if you have multiple of those symptoms, it may be an indication that you have low progesterone and you might want to look further into what's going on with your hormones and have your hormones tested, because once you know where they're at, we then know exactly how to bring them back into balance. So hopefully that's helpful to you. If you would like to discuss any of this further with me, you can reach out to me through my website. There's a Work With Me button at the top of my website page, www.betterbrainhealth.info, and I do offer complimentary 30-minute consultations so that you can get to know me, I can understand your struggle, and we can decide if we're a good fit to work together. So I welcome you to reach out if you're looking for support in balancing your hormones. And I'll be back tomorrow with another session in my hormone series.